All right, everybody. Hope you're doing well. This morning, I was having a dwelling with the Word study with some other Bible studiers of Exodus, first 10 verses of chapter 3. And I felt compelled to come here and record some of my thoughts on these verses. So I'm going to share this with you, talk you through what those thoughts were, and then invite you to have some thoughts of your own. All right, so we'll start with just going through these verses, and I've got the NIV pulled up, the New International Version, but you can use whatever translation, of course, you prefer. But this is about Moses and the burning bush, a story that perhaps you know a little bit about, or at least have heard about this burning bush concept. It goes like this, starting with the beginning of chapter 3. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses, and he said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. The home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me. And I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Now, this is an interesting set of verses. Maybe initially you already have some thoughts on this. Obviously, this tells a story of something that would have happened long ago. But might there be some application here today? When I read this morning, the first thing I said in reaction is I didn't think I would be moved so much by a passage from Exodus today. You know, this is pretty Old Testament stuff. But let's look a little closer at it. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. This is very interesting to me because flock, what could that mean? Flock of sheep. And as Christians, we often use this term shepherd and the sheep, that your pastor engaging in the spiritual care and direction of the congregation is like a shepherd with sheep. And so this reminds me of that dynamic, right? But not just any sheep. This isn't just Moses's sheep. This is the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. So this is interesting because now he is entrusted with the care of another, of someone or something he doesn't own, right? The same way a pastor is with their congregation, the same way a husband is with his wife, right? And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness, right? Through the wilderness. I think some of the translations say to the west side of the wilderness, but nonetheless, we got a lot of wilderness when we're trying to be Christians, right? There's a lot of fighting out there against Christian beliefs, shooting them down as being anti-scientific, as being controlling, as being hateful, as being marginalizing, these sorts of things. And there's a lot of just division in the world, a lot of muck and mire that we have to go through. And there's a lot of confusing text and theology out there that we have to wade through in order to figure out our own faith and really work with our relationship with God. Right? So here, the pastor, the congregation, they wade through the wilderness. Moses and his flock go through or to the far side of the wilderness. Husband and wife go through their tough times, their own wilderness, to try to survive the dynamic of two very different people trying to make one partnership. And it came to Horeb, Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Okay, so this is always a very odd thought that you've got the Lord appearing in a bush, right? Well, why doesn't he just show his face? I mean, we do have some language to say that, no one sees the face of God and lives, but I think this is interesting because when I think about a burning bush, think of things that are burning right now. The world, some people would claim, is burning. I mean, literally, there have been places in California burning recently, and there's so much division, there's so much hatred, there's so much suffering and marginalization, there's so much of people who feel as though they are being just erased entirely out there, right? This is a problem. And we got countries with nukes who could take us all out. So we've got a burning world, don't we? But somehow, some way, we have not been destroyed. Right? That fire that is burning us has not consumed us. It very well should have, probably. All these nukes out there. I don't know how we're surviving, but we are. Maybe we can credit God a little bit for that. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. He found that very curious, so he's like, well, let me go over there and see what that's about. And the Lord said, Moses, Moses, I'm calling you by name. And God talks to you by name. You probably should listen. And he did. He says, here I am. You see that throughout the Bible, and meaning not just, yes, what do you want, but I'm at your service, Lord. Do not come any closer. Why not? Why wouldn't you come any closer? Might it be that if you come close to a burning world, too close to a burning world, that you might be consumed by that fire? You might be consumed by the ideology on one side or another, tempted by what you see as rational argument or even emotionally compelling argument, rather than making a faithful and moral evaluation. If you get consumed by one ideology, you are now in a division zone, right? You are on the opposite side of some other ideology. As Christians, we don't need to have ideologies. We have faith, and we have a sense of right and wrong, and we apply that to any particular given case-by-case scenario. We don't need to push anything other than that. But we can easily be tempted into talking in ideological terms. And when we've done that, we've already lost the game. So the caution here, not come any closer, that's important. Do not come any closer to that burning bush. Now you need to take your flock out there and see that burning bush, right? Because we need to do something about it. But we're not going to get burned by it. We're not going to get consumed by it. What are we going to do? We're going to take our gloves off. Here we talk about taking your sandals off. Which, I know that doesn't mean taking your gloves off. But my thought is, when I read this, we need to get down and dirty, right? We need to actually be able to fight, but not fight humans, right? Because we're not ideological. We're not trying to say anybody is evil in this process and anybody needs to be destroyed. We just want to fight the corruption. We want to be loving, and we want to seek justice, and we want to see the right moral outcomes occur. And we want people to see how we live and how we think and the peace and calm that comes with what we do and the service in what that we do. And for them to come to us and say, what is it that makes you do what you do? Or how is it that you are so peaceful in this burning world? And when you ask me that question, that's when we're going to talk about the gospel. God goes on to say, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. So that's, lots of generations there. Moses gets a little scared. Well, I guess you can't blame him. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. So he is talking about how there is this suffering that comes from the slave holding of his people. Right. So those out there who want to make the argument that the Old Testament is pro-slavery, at least this is one passage that suggests that maybe it's not. Now, some might look at this and say, well, is this just privileging one set of people as the chosen people? And of course, that interpretation has been made. But I would suggest there's something else going on here when we see 6 different peoples that are mentioned later as for the home of the land flowing with milk and honey, and the 5 or so different generations that are mentioned. God is the God of everybody. His kingdom transcends generations, it transcends race, it transcends cultures and countries. His glory, his grace now is available to everybody who is willing to accept it and willing to take a look and be curious and be open to the moves that God wants to make. And notably, when we get down to verse 9, we see what might be arguably the only direct type of injustice that's talked about in this passage, and that's oppression, right? Obviously, slavery is an injustice, but it is an oppression, and it's causing the suffering here, right? And the fact that is the focus, is this oppression through slavery and through poor treatment that causes suffering, it makes me think maybe this is important. Maybe this is the first act of justice for us to address this sort of oppression. This is the godly act. This is the good work act that's claimed here. So think about what's going on in our world. We've got division, right? We've got some hatred. We've got some marginalization, some oppression. These are things that we as Christians can address. But there's strength in numbers. There's some synergy there when you go with your whole flock to fight this. One theme I really pull out of this passage and a lot of the Bible is that we're doing it wrong. God tells us and often shows us in the Bible the right way. He saves people out of oppression. We need to be doing the same thing. So what do you think? What do you see in this passage? Maybe something similar to what I saw. Maybe you think that I'm crazy. Maybe you saw something that really spoke to you as well. Maybe you see conflicts that are going on in the world, perhaps even in geographical areas that are similar to the geographical areas mentioned in this passage, where some of the thoughts here would apply as well. I'd love to hear from you if you do have that. So feel free to comment below, like, subscribe, share, all the things. And I'll continue to try to make videos. Still trying to figure out what the perfect type of video is for this channel. But if you give me your feedback, I certainly will take that into consideration. Thank you so much for watching. Dwell in the Word. God bless.